Midgar. Tech town with a steel sky, this place is notorious in gaming, being one of the homes to one of the most revolutionary games of all times in terms of storytelling. And with a new remake on the horizon, people were ecstatic. And so was I to delve deep into this game. Its characters, graphics, gameplay, all of it. So without any dilly-dallies or shilly-shallies, I welcome you to...
Careful now.
To the Final Fantasy VII Remake Retrospective. Final Fantasy VII. One of the most revolutionary games of its time, all in terms of graphical upgrades, strategies of gameplay, and most importantly, connection to storytelling, creating a boundless legend still looked back on. But with its limitations on the PlayStation 1, it really has aged. It's influenced all areas of gaming that wouldn't have been hit otherwise. So brings us to modern day, the days of reboots, remasters, and re-releases. And most importantly, remakes. The game we begin to cover today follows the first part of the story of the main Final Fantasy VII, with much more love, effort, and modernized coding to provide the best Midgar experience possible. I was gifted this game by my close friend Anthony, and who in Christmas spirit found it fitting for me to play this game. I mean, filled with joy, I proceeded to do exactly that, and after fully completing this game, down to the last materia, I can firmly say that this joyous experience through Midgar's Part 1 was never lost. And before I dive into the live stream of this 2020 save year, I'm gonna give you some warnings. This game is rated T, so watch out for the and the along the way. It's pretty much clean without that though, and fine to watch with the whole family, you could say. But aside from me saying that my channel is PG-13, I will give a spoiler warning, and a big one at that. I mean, in the Chapter 1 segment, I only cover Chapter 1, and the character development there, with, you know, maybe some hints to later. But other than that, in the music and gameplay, everything is fair game. Now with that aside, let's press continue. Though only a portion of Gaia, this game is near perfect in terms of the subgenre of action RPG, with pristine gameplay and mixing spellcasting, turn-based combat, and a slashingly satisfying battle loop matched nearly only by Kingdom Hearts. We cover here today 3 main portions before delving directly into the timeless story of Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, Barret, and many others along the way. To be specific, the portions covered in this video are going to be the action-packed Chapter 1, the satisfaction of the main gameplay, and the orchestral, suspenseful, and electronic balance of the soundtrack. So without further ado, let us enter the definitive Midgar experience. Now, openings are my thing, and this opening, paying homage back to the origin, a common reoccurrence throughout this game, improves dramatically on delivering an emotional blow to the soul, panning through a desert to show the upper plates, followed by a seemingly dead flower to show the Sector 6 slums and the macro reactor, laying out the scene for the rest of the game. It's subtle, but man is it effective how perfectly organized this is in showing the entire game, only being topped off with the perfect track to pan into Aerith, one of the mainstay characters found within the game, as well as Anthony's,
a real crush on a video game character.
Let's say, waifu. She seems to be following the life force of Mako energy spilling from the Shinra pipe, but that's only for us to pan into the widest shot and cinematic peak of the song, revealing the game's logo. I have never gotten more shivers than when this orchestral climax hit, and by God, did it hit well. This only gets improved upon when entering the first Mako reactor, and with the badass icon of gaming, Cloud Strife, along with most of Sector 7's Avalanche, casually train surfing into the eco-terrorist plan of blowing up Mako Reactor 1. I adore this. It introduces Barret and Cloud, 2 main characters, somehow throwing you straight in the middle of the action, but developing them just enough to feel accompanied and acquainted with the slum mercenaries, which is exactly what Cloud is, a merc to the rest of the crew's goal. Avalanche, a crew planning to take down Shinra, the corrupted corporate owners of Midgar, are here obviously planning to blow up the Mako reactor to make a statement. I mean, Avalanche is much bigger, but when I refer to Avalanche, you'll know exactly who I'm referring to. You proceed to find you were hired because of Tifa, who, living in a bar in the Sector 7 slums, helps provide for Avalanche so they can take down whatever they may need. And in this case Sector 1. After reaching the core post-tutorials, which are quaintly efficient with a small side screen to just keep you in the action, you encounter your first boss, a scorpion mech, and have choices, 20 or 30 minutes to put on the bomb. Though this choice doesn't really matter, there are key choices in the game that do, giving a personalized experience to all who take this on. But overall, choose 20 minutes.
Pretty cocky, ain't you?
After taking down the bosses Cloud and Barret, you rush back up, save Jessie, which might I add is one of the most underrated characters in this game, and then you meet up with Biggs and Wedge, and let the reactor go boom. It's a bit more in depth than that altogether in Chapter 1, with a lot more Cloud has the hop of a SpaceX rocket, and a bit more development of the characters, but all around is a great taster to how this game is going to be. The Scorpion mech boss is actually also really enjoyable, even in hard mode. Hard mode isn't unlocked until post-game though, it's just a heads up. Before we dive headfirst into the soundtrack of this game, which is single-handedly one of the most notable parts about Final Fantasy VII as a whole, I want to go over the character introductions with mainly Chapter 1. We're obviously introduced to our main character, and one of my favorite main characters in all of gaming, Cloud Strife. Or should I say Shinra Super Soldier. Cloud has been infused with Mako, the live stream power source of Midgar, which though it is meant to flow freely, is being exploited by Shinra executives. Cloud finds work off of being a mercenary, and in this situation, he's working with Avalanche.
This is a one-time gig. When it's done, we're done.
And I can tell you that doesn't age well. Contrary to Cloud's past, we have the best dad in video games, Barrett Wallace. And yes, he's better than Sojiro. Man, do I like Barrett in this game. In terms of Chapter 1, he's stern and motivated to get the job done, being one of his long-term dreams to take a huge indent on Shinra. I mean, with a gun for an arm, he's ready to take on the world, and all for the better of the planet. Barrett is just such a cool character in my honest opinion, and his deep-rooted motivation being paved, his want to save Midgar as a whole, and his undying determination to better the planet for his adoptive daughter Marlene, he's just the perfect guy to preach the life of the planet.
You gonna stand there and pretend you can't hear the planet crying out in pain? I know you can!
It's not until later that we truly see how he interacts and cares for Marlene, but man, Barrett evolves in such a way that his ecstatic motivation is contagious. Now the rest of Avalanche, being Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse, are definitely given a way bigger spotlight later on, through an entire chapter, but from first impressions, they're really fun characters with potential to develop even further. Biggs and Wedge are like the duo of absolute lads in the friend group, with high spirits no matter where you find them. I mean, Biggs is a bit more cocky and a lot more of a jock. Wedge is closer to the cliche nerd, but also with high hopes as a trait. Wedge does end up becoming more of a comedy relief though, and that's kinda cool. But out of the three, the most developed character in Chapter 1 is Jesse. Somehow only in one chapter, Jesse is transitioned from Cloud is sketchy to I want him in my bed. I mean, you can see the trust she's gaining to Cloud, and honestly, her character's huge crush on Cloud, and he's having none of it, ends up being a real entertaining contrast between the characters. Jesse ends up being a lighthearted character, which is almost opposite to the menacing aura of Cloud, getting him really to break a bit from his rock-solid shell. As much as a lot of people are against her, I really like Jesse in this game, and Avalanche as a whole, being on this one mission, throwing you straight into the action of the game while simultaneously developing characters and hinting towards the plot, is a hard thing to achieve in an introduction, especially in the original, but altogether ends up in a perfect tandem for the remake, making me love this game from the very start. Altogether, I'd easily give this introduction a 9 out of 10. It throws you in with only implications to hold you off, but quickly develops and answers your questions through the Sector 1 bombing run, even hinting towards the greatest villain in video game history. There were only slight annoyances in this introduction, but having as long as it did to address what it wanted to, perfected a great thing and made it phenomenal. But as a starting mission, especially if you're thrown into it straight away, is nothing without a good bit of music to accompany it, which is the next thing I'd like to cover. The soundtrack. There's been tours all over the world for this soundtrack, and by the great fat chocobo did this soundtrack hit me hard. Timeless classics such as One Winged Angel and Wall Market were remade to become something almost no other game can achieve. If you open your game with revolutionary graphics and this track bombing run, it sets up a hype like no other. I get literal goosebumps hearing the climax of the song, so in turn, I should give you a peek. If this doesn't get you excited for a video game, I generally don't know what will. The remaking, you see what I did there, of a track is just peak performance and even repurposed in this game. And by the way, yes, the example I'm talking about is Wall Market. The original Final Fantasy VII Wall Market theme has been reused in Chapter 9's Gang Hideout, and by God, is it remade in such a way, especially with the theme during battle, that captures the spirit of the original so much better. I mean, here's a listen. Now, I can't cover that beauty of a track without covering how they did Wall Market in this game, and by God, did they do it well. There's technically 4 sections to Wall Market, and all based on Corneo's trio, as well as Corneo himself, and each with their own theming makes everything around Sector 6 such a blast to get immersed in. Andrea's Saturday Night Live-esque remix, Chocobo Sam's Western redo, and Madam M's spiritual remaster of the main Wall Market theme somehow merge in so seamlessly, and hit on the gambling-rich Vegas appeal of Wall Market in total. But none of these could have stemmed if it weren't for the bass track, which honestly, you should just listen to. Now going back to the expressway between Sector 5 and 7, I just have to say how magical its soundtrack is. I felt so motivated to move the mechanical hands, even though, you know, I wish I could yeet Aerith. And with that, I should focus back on the soundtrack. It just felt super magical. And the battle theme there is one of my favorite battle tracks in the game. Here it is. Now, I could go on for days about this soundtrack, but these last three have by far got to be my favorite tracks in the game. I mean, contrary to Persona, I don't really know how to organize these songs as well, but I'll make a top 3 real quick, I guess. So, coming in at number 3 is the closing song itself, one of the only few voiced over songs in this game, the song that's gonna get this video copyright claimed, if it isn't already. Holobayash! I don't know, it's basically a voiceover of the Sector 5 Slum song, and that song is beautiful in of itself. I'm gonna take the route of trying not to get copyrighted here, so here's the Sector 5 Slum song. It's so calming and beautiful, fitting for Aerith's hometown. Now to hit the other end of the spectrum, I'm gonna go cover the final boss theme or the build-up theme. The classic song redone to perfection. None other than Sephiroth's theme, One Winged Angel. I don't think I need to say anything other than just listen to this. It's a timeless classic, and even before I started to enter the franchise of Final Fantasy VII as a whole, I absolutely adored this song, and Smash Bros, it really did it well. I kid you not, I love this theme so much, but in total, there's just one that's better, and it just gets me into the perfect vibe every time it pops up. I'll answer this question with one that I've had to answer once before. Reno. Now to be more specific, I'm talking about the Turks theme. Just listen to this beauty. I adore this track so damn much. I enjoyed every time the Turks in general appeared too. Now obviously I've missed some of the most important tracks, such as Victory Fanfare, Tifa's theme, Barrett's theme, and even Aerith's theme. These are honestly the classics, the redefining ones. But those you've probably heard already, and you've most likely heard them in the background of this here retrospective. So I recommend peeking into the OST if you're curious. It's one of the best of all time, and if I'm gonna be dead honest, its balancing of genres and matching of themes with those of the game's overall theme of loss and appreciation makes this a perfect soundtrack. So, given that, music is by far a 10 out of 10. It's a bucket list of mine to see this in concert, and honestly, it always has been. F***ing gorgeous. Perfection is almost impossible in video games, and honestly, everybody knows why. There's a flaw in everything, whether or not you may see it. But are they flaws or are they nitpicks? As seen by the gameplay of this game, and honestly mixing my favorite main battle mechanics of all time, taking stuff from the slashing of Kingdom Hearts, the upgradable powers of JRPGs like Persona, and the gratifying connection of fun weapons and attacks from something like Breath of the Wild, all having a three-way love child. Oh man, I said this video was going to be PG-13, huh? In the end, creates the gameplay and battle mechanics of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now here's here's the thing, did it work well? To answer that, I'll split this gameplay into 3 parts: upgradables and materia, abilities and spells, and obviously the main battle system. So let's get into it. First up, with the biggest connection to the UI, is the upgrades and materia. This system helps alter the main gameplay and cover elements on any character, allowing for free range of abilities and class to be swapped around with each other. Barret can be a paladin or healer, Tifa can be a monk or straight DPS, Aerith can be guaranteed healer or semi-healer, and Cloud can really be whatever you want. I adore this system. Materia is upgradable and interchangeable, allowing you to adapt every encounter you face with pristine and exact changes whenever you need them. Something as cool as linked elemental materia making all attacks do a certain type of damage has always been a guilty pleasure of mine. It's glorious. And the HP absorbed ability from the boy Chadley is nothing to be breezed over. Not to mention upgrades and straight summon materia. Summoning something as badass as Behemoth to wreck everything alongside you, introducing new abilities and building upon previous stats, man, it just adds more strategy to an already great game. And not to mention the callbacks to other Final Fantasies. The summon materia doesn't really feel as much as a materia as other materia, but I don't usually see anything wrong with that. I mean, the normal materia gives you just as much valuable abilities that you can use outside of a boss battle, which is one thing that I didn't like about the summons. They're exclusively in boss battles. I mean, they are a bit overpowered, so it makes sense, but maybe having a less powerful version to perfect it before you get into a boss battle may have been cool. I mean, the normal materia gives you just as much value or abilities that you can use outside of a boss battle too. Such as, if you mix a deadly dodge materia with an MP or HP absorb, you will be absolutely deadly. But a materia isn't usually useful or even applicable if it isn't for weapon upgrades. And I will admit, in my beginning chapters of the game, I completely forgot about upgrading weapons. And oh, what a mistake that was. The weapon upgrading system can allow for an auto setting if anybody wishes that, which is really nice, but in this situation, I genuinely enjoyed this type of micromanagement. You get to delve deep into the nitty-gritty of what each weapon can do, sacrificing materia slots for weapon damage or something like Bloodsucker, where you can gain health after killing an enemy. Determining how I wanted to play through this system had me invested in micromanagement all the way through, and especially with this menu system of a space reminiscent screen made everything just that much better. Now, an upgrade would not be useful without the spells or abilities to actually upgrade, and the way these abilities are used is through 3 main things: ATB, MP, and limit. ATB is gained over time, allowing you to use a small side box to determine how powerful a spell or ability may be used. ATB is gained over time, allowing you to use a small side box to determine how powerful a spell or ability to be used, some even requiring MP or multiple ATB to actually use the attack. And you will get a nice little noise basically telling you when you're ready. Now, when you enter this menu, the entire game slows down to allow you to determine what you're going to use, and honestly, it never took me out of the action. And similar to Kingdom Hearts 3, if that's not your style, you can easily create shortcuts in the menu to adapt the gameplay to your preferred way. The ATB is gained from dealing or taking damage, or by waiting for a designated amount of time for one to fill. This works in tandem with materia and buffs to increase ATB, or even with a refocus limit break to give you 3 slots instead of 2. This game works its best with these slots, and just opens up new possibilities through weapons abilities. Some increase the stagger of an enemy like Focus Thrust, and others do mounds of damage like Maximum Fury. All of these are just earned through utilization of different weapons, and it just makes the system just that much better. It works so well with the main gameplay, allowing you to take down the same enemy with a variety of different strategies, from laying down arcane wards to healing constantly with a magnify materia. The possibilities truly feel endless, especially when considering different types of weapons. Now, none of this would feel as good as it does without the main gameplay loop of Final Fantasy VII Remake. And Jesus, it's great! Swapping between characters and playstyles, allowing for a refreshing loop of battles that, contrary to the first game, never felt out of place. Random encounters didn't just feel like, oh yeah, I'm going to a long battle that's going to take me a while. They felt somewhat meaningful in what places they were put in. Each character has their own different types of attack patterns, such as Cloud being a swordy, allowing for Punisher mode with triangle, which then opens up parries and different ways to attack. His general gameplay revolves around damage, but also being able to take damage. He can be used in many other ways, but honestly using him as damage feels the most natural. And may I just say, get triple slash as soon as possible. It's way too overpowered. Cloud mainly has physical with a bit of magic in there to spice it up. Our favorite mercenary usually gets a great physical attack stat with a decent MP gauge as well. And if I'm completely honest, Cloud was my favorite character to play as by far. Everything about his hack and slash-esque gameplay was satisfying to pull off, and by God did this game do it justice. The next character is Barret, with a ton more health and a huge opportunity for MP. Though his usual square attack doesn't usually do the best damage, the extra blast at the end and his overcharge deal mounds better when at range. But his abilities and and spellcasting easily make up for anything lost with him. I mean, I love Barret. He plays really well as an offensive character at range, but I usually ended up adapting him to a healer. His range, and especially his attack pattern when you're not controlling him, place him directly into the healing position. And, you know, he never let me down. He does suffer a bit from hard time evading, but this trade-off felt natural. But now, on to Tifa. Tifa is speed, and oh my god, I f***ing love Tifa.
Playing as Tifa.
And maybe the fact that Tifa's better than Aerith. But I would never cheat on Reno. I mean, before we delve deep into that argument later on, let's just get back to gameplay. Tifa is fast and efficient, working in the style of almost Bayonetta, with her chi level adapting to how you play, and rewarding you for combos. If you don't use Tifa Lockhart as your main attacker, you're just using her wrong. I adore rushing in and out as Tifa, and even blocking as her makes her playstyle one of my favorite out of the 4. I mean, yeah, she is a bit squishy at times, but definitely a great choice for attack and a main damage dealer. But if you need somebody to counter a squishy character, I introduce you to the most useful character in battle, Aerith Gainsborough. Aerith. Her magic attacks are always useful, but her crazy high MP gauge is her main trope, making her arcane wards, mass healing, fleeting familiars, all of it feel like a summoner straight out of Terraria. Her trade-off for being the best magic user is her health, which is tremendously low. It makes complete sense, but she's crazy good at every magic thing she does. I mean, her Ray of Judgment ability after using 2AB is like crazy good. I love using all 4 of these characters in tandem with one another, trading weapons and materia as I see fit. It feels natural, and usually when a gameplay feels natural, the gameplay feels good. One main thing in this gameplay loop though is staggering and limit breaks. I love staggering. It allows strategy of not just block and attack, rinse and repeat, but rather attacking with certain abilities to max out the orange bar beneath a boss's health, which, quick mention, is actually placed really nice, and it never looks out of place in the UI. Some enemies have fun weak points or specific areas to attack that have separate health, creating more criticals or crippling damage respectively. This system really made all the boss fights and interactions super fun, and not just a hack and slash. It felt like I had purpose, rather than, oh, he's weak to this, now spam that. That is something I also liked about Persona 5 as well, and something I like even more in this game. These are 2 different types of games though, and in doing so, there's different ultimate mechanics that may reign over. Final Fantasy mixed a strategy I loved straight into gameplay, and made me save my ultimates or limit breaks for a point where they're of use, rather than just blasting them off straight away. Limit breaks either maximize damage, give more ATB, maximize stagger, or in Aerith's case, maximize healing and buffs. Each character's limit activates a cutscene, and it just makes it that much better to see them pop off and kill a boss. These attacks can really turn the tide of a battle, like they did for me many times over. It's so great to see Barret blast into a robot right before everybody's right about to die, and clutch out the round. It's so fun, and together pulls a great experience to play. I adore this gameplay loop with all of my heart, and it makes everything that much better to mess around with. I love how it meshed together the love I had for other RPGs and Kingdom Hearts with a fresh new style that this remake had me over the moon with. Man, I just love it. All of it. It does have a few nitpicks at times that do feel a bit drawn out, but altogether, the gameplay gets an easy 9 out of 10. The time that was given to making this an engaging experience is like no other. Now, I mean, as you can tell by how long I've run through this video, I absolutely adore the intro, the music, and especially the gameplay. The first chapter seems to show the amount of character evolution there is to be developed, while throwing you straight into the action with lovable characters and intense sequences. The music has a great balancing of balance between genres that somehow fit and evolve seamlessly between location and chapter. Beautifully orchestrated tracks that you'll even see going on tour. And the gameplay loop with mounds of adaptation pulls the experience together in such a way that the materia, abilities, and all else make the game lay a special place in my heart. While I could mention graphics and art style, the almost photorealistic beauty of this game could really be evident within this video. There's not really much to be said other than it's just made in such a photorealistic and great way that it's perfect for a game like this. Now throw all of this into an almost perfect action RPG and you get an amazing, engaging experience that makes even the stingy fans swoon. I was taken away by how beautiful this game is. And with these introductory portions of a retrospective, I think it's evident that I could go on for hours about this game. But on that note, I close this first episode of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, a retrospective. And as I say, it's always a privilege to be able to talk about these games that I love. My opinions may not be the best, but I hope to inspire someone out to chase your dreams or enjoy an experience that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So I end off with